It may not be the best conference, but it's a whole lot better than it used to be, and it might be the most fun, and it's probably the most competitive, especially at the top. Welcome to Pac-12 Power Rankings right here at the Voice of College Football. Please like the video, share the videos out on social media. Not everyone knows, believe it or not everyone knows that we're here talking college football at the Voice of College Football each and every day with you. Let's get to the Pac-12 Power Rankings, and the top five are almost impossible to distinguish, but we will do our best. Let's go to the bottom at number 12, and the worst team in the Power 5, not just the Pac-12, is Colorado. And Vanderbilt made this official last weekend with a win over Kentucky. So up until last weekend, Colorado at least had a win in the Power 5 against hapless Cal. So we would have to consider Vandy to be the worst in the Power 5, but Vandy took care of that with a win over Kentucky. So Colorado at 1-9, 1-6 in conference play. Lost to Arizona State over the weekend. They gave up 557 yards of total offense. And Colorado's got a date coming up against the University of Washington, one of the hot teams out west. At number 11, we go to the aforementioned Golden Bears of Cal. They did give USC a run a couple weeks ago and took that game deep into the fourth quarter at 41-36, but Cal still losing a lot of football games under Justin Wilcox. 3-7 overall, 1-6 in conference play. They were competitive, as we mentioned, against not only USC, but against Notre Dame. Hail Mary almost grasped to send that game in South Bend to overtime, but they didn't get it done. They have, again, lost to Colorado, so that's the black mark against the Golden Bears. They take on Stanford in the big game coming up this Saturday. At number 10, the aforementioned Cardinal of Stanford. What's going on with David Shaw and his program? This was an elite program 10 years ago under Jim Harbaugh, then handed off to David Shaw, and he kept it up for quite a few years, most notably and most recently under Christian McCaffrey and that 2015 Rose Bowl championship team. And since then, just worse and worse and worse and worse. And the last four seasons have been dismal at Stanford. They're 1-7 in conference play. Their number one running back, Casey Filkins, averages less than 4 yards per carry. That's awful in college football. Tanner McKee, 12 touchdowns, 7 picks. NFL scouts love him, but he's not producing at the collegiate level, 59%. That's mainly because of the offensive line and the lack of skill around him. Stanford's last three losses by 25, 38, and 35 points, but of course, they do have a sterling win against Notre Dame on the road in South Bend. Stanford takes on Cal in the 40th anniversary of The Band is on the Field. Stanford and Cal. Now we go on to number 9 in the Pac-12 and to Arizona State coming in at 3-7. They've got 2 wins in the Pac-12. They lost to Washington State over the weekend. Quarterback Trenton Bourget having a fine season, 8 touchdowns, 4 picks since he stepped in for Emory Jones, completing almost 72% of his passes. And Arizona State's got a date against Oregon State coming up this Saturday. All right, up to number 8, and a team that 8th ranked in the Pac-12. The record's not good at 4-6. However, Arizona taking tremendous strides under Jedd Fisch. Of course, they were deplorable at the end of Rich Rod's tenure and then throughout the entire Kevin Sumlin debacle. Arizona finally won a game, of course, in conference play last year after a zillion consecutive losses, something like 19 or 20. Again, 4-6 this year, and coming off that enormous win at the Rose Bowl against UCLA, knocking them out of national playoff consideration. Jaden DeLora was 23 of 28 in that ball game against the Bruins, 315 yards and 2 touchdowns. Arizona takes on Washington State. That should be quite an affair coming up in Tucson this weekend. At number 7 in the Pac-12, a good Washington State team. Of course, Jake Dicker took over a difficult situation from Nick Rolovich, and he made the best of it in 2021, carries it into 22. 6-4, they've reached the bowl eligibility status, 3-4 in the Pac-12. Cam Ward's got 20 touchdowns and 8 interceptions. Their most notable effort this year, Washington State, was taking Oregon to the brink. They easily could have won that game. They turned it over late. Cam Ward with a pick six, 44-41. Really good effort by the Cougars there. They go to Arizona trying to get their 7th win on Saturday. At number 6 in the Pac-12, and we're starting to raise the bar here with Oregon State. Oregon State with 3 losses at 7-3, and of course they've got Arizona State, and then Civil War territory against the Ducks of Oregon. They're 4-3 in the Pac-12. They have lost to USC and Washington. Close, close, close. Great game a couple Friday nights ago against the Huskies in Seattle. Almost pulled that game out. Lost it late. Only real bad showing by the Beavers this year against Utah, losing 42-16, a game in which their starting quarterback Chance Nolan was lost and replaced by Ben Gulbranson. Now Gulbranson is the starter, and he's playing well. 2 touchdowns, no picks, his last outing. All right, to the top 5. And you know what? We could place these in any order, and I could justify any of the spots for any of the teams 1 through 5. But at number 5, we've got the Huskies of Washington coming off a monumental win against Oregon, of course, 37-34 at Autzen Stadium. Michael Penix was lights out with 408 yards passing, 2 touchdowns. This team, though, lost to Arizona State. Keep that in mind. 5-2 in the Pac-12. They've got Colorado coming up. Then, of course, the Apple Cup game against Washington State. So the Huskies going to be favored to finish a lofty 10-2 and 7-2 in conference play. But again, the bad loss against Arizona State in particular. The Huskies also lost to the UCLA Bruins and pretty much controlled in that game at the Rose Bowl. We move on to number 4, and the Utes of Utah, the defending Pac-12 champions and still in the running. 6-1 in conference play, of course. Way back, they lost to Florida on the road in Gainesville. Their conference loss against UCLA at the Rose Bowl. In the past couple of weeks, they've defeated Arizona by 25. They defeated Stanford by 35. We mentioned the Oregon State win by 26. Cam Rising, 19 touchdowns and 4 interceptions. Tavian Thomas not having quite the year that he had last season. Maybe some personal issues there that we understand. And Utah, again, 8-2 overall. And they tagged USC with the loss, of course, at Reich Eccles 43-42. On a 2-point conversion at the gun. Utah goes to Oregon. What a game that should be, and a monumental game in the race for the Pac-12 championship game appearance. Number 3 in the Pac-12, coming off a rough loss against Arizona, but still at number 3, UCLA. Bruins 8-2, 5-2 in Pac-12 play. They've actually played the best against the top 5 teams in the conference with a win against Utah by 10 points, a game they controlled. A strong showing against Washington. They won that game by 8, but Washington had to storm back to make it close. But they really had it won in the third quarter. And then the 15-point loss against Oregon. DTR having a fine season, 20 touchdowns and 4 picks. Zach Charbonnet, what a year after a 181-yard game against Arizona. So don't blame him for the loss. 7.5 yards per carry and 13 touchdowns for Charbonnet. Again, they lost to Arizona to really drop them out of the race for a college football playoff appearance, but they're still in the running for a Pac-12 championship game, and they've got the annual showdown and the battle for the City of Angels against USC on Saturday. Now to the top 2 positions, and we go to number 2, the previous number 1, Oregon, losing to Washington, and this has really cost them, of course. Oregon could have made a college football playoff, but now they're out of it. 8-2 overall, 6-1, had won all those consecutive games after the Georgia loss early. This is the most complete team in the Pac-12, and I actually believe they are probably the best team in the Pac-12. Would love to see them play USC. Bo Nix at quarterback, outstanding season. Troy Franklin, 5 catches for $139 in the loss against the Huskies. The defense sometimes looks exceptional, like one of the best in the nation, led by Noah Sewell and Bennett Williams. Again, they lost to Washington, and that ruined their hopes of a college football playoff. But hope springs eternal for the Pac-12 championship as they take on Utah coming up on Saturday. And finally, in the number 1 position, USC. Even though in some respects, they have the worst showing against the top 5 teams in the conference with just 1 game played. They have not defeated anybody else in this top 5 ranking. And they've got the loss against Utah, 43-42. But USC's got the best loss. And they also are 9-1 right now, 7-1 in the conference. Caleb Williams, outstanding, 31 touchdowns, 2 picks. They have weapons all over the place, of course. Travis Dye, however, their number 1 running back with 9 touchdowns, is out now for the rest of the season, hurt against Colorado. The defense started strong, played above its head, And then Eric Gentry, that injury to him has really hurt the defense, along with some other injuries on that side of the ball. Again, the loss to Utah, the only mark against the Trojans, who are now 9-1, taking on UCLA at the Rose Bowl coming up on Saturday. What a day it should be. USC, UCLA, Oregon, Utah will tell us who will play in the Pac-12 championship game with one more week to play, but the Trojans out of conference against Notre Dame on that final weekend of November. Our Pac-12 rankings right here at the Voice of College Football. Leave your comments below, and we will see you, most notably, you Pac-12 fans. Our USC show is Monday night at 11 Eastern, 8 Pacific on our USC channel, right here at the Voice of College Football.